Today's video is brought to you by Origin PC. Origin is a PC company that builds award-winning custom PCs for gamers, enthusiasts, and creative professionals. My Origin PC has helped me enrich my live streaming experience and increase my editing productivity by a large margin. If you're ready to level up your PC game, then visit Origin using the affiliate link in the description today. Woo! Guys, I'm really excited for this one. Today we're doing the Take Your Best Shot Challenge. And this is where I wanted to challenge you to submit some of your photos to me to edit and review. And this is a good chance for us to connect. I get to see what you guys are shooting. And based on what I've seen so far, you guys you're good photographers. Like, you're really good. Is that the chicken nuggets? Hold on. Okay, before we actually start, I might need to, these things are so good. I haven't eaten yet, so I go, Okay, we're gonna edit these photos in Lightroom, and let's just get started. Okay, and our first image comes to us from Alana, who has provided us a really cool picture of a canyon with a bridge. And wow, that's a cool scene. So okay, let's get started with this one. So Alana, what I would probably do is I would decrease some of the highlights a little bit. I'm gonna boost the exposure just a touch. Let's see, I'm gonna darken the shadows, just give a little bit of contrast here. I'm gonna add some detail by increasing some of the sharpness. I would do some noise reduction, just a touch. Put that at like 17. Since we've got all these rocks and trees and stuff, I want to add a little bit of, where's it at? Some texture. You can take this texture slider and boost it up. Don't get too crazy with it. Everything with photo editing is subtlety. I kind of want to, this spot down here is bugging me. These guys climbing up the hill. They don't look like they're posing exactly. Let's see if we can use the healing brush to get rid of those. Now, normally that's something that I might do in Photoshop using content aware fill. And maybe we can put some more bushes there, increase the feather. So you can't really tell. Let's see if that makes sense when we zoom out. Hey, you know, I don't really see them there. All right, so now that we've got the exposure in a good place, let's start working on some color. So we're gonna twirl open the color tab here, and we've got a lot of browns in this image. We've got a lot of greens. So I want to kind of target these greens, and you can do that with this little target tool right here, the crosshairs. So let's target that color of green, right? And I want to try and shift some of the hue on that just to see how much of it we have control over. And you can see it's going down in the valley here. It's affecting those greens. It's affecting the greens pretty much all over this picture. So we can keep those greens the same, or we can adjust them just to a little bit of a darker. Let's saturate them a touch. I don't know if I'd go too crazy with the lightness. I want to try and boost a little bit of these browns. We're messing with the luminance there. Let's crank the saturation up just a touch. You can see how it's really cool to use that crosshair to fine tune any of these colors in your image. Something else you can do is you'll notice that like atmospheric perspective will take the areas that are farthest away from you and they'll make them really kind of hazy and smoky. So if you take this dehaze slider and you play with that a little bit, you'll find that you can kill off some of that atmospheric perspective. It adds some contrast. Oops. Zoom out. Here we go. And so we're left with something like the before, okay, and then the after. Alana, good shot. I think the last thing I might do with this is, you know, add a touch of vignette to the corners so we can draw the eye into the center of this image. Boom. All right, moving on. Okay, this next one's from Cameron Hansen. Cameron's a local photographer here in Columbus, and he sent me this picture of his girlfriend. This was taken actually at Otherworld. We recently did a video at Otherworld. It's a super cool place and a perfect spot to get some amazing photos. This is actually a raw image, so we've got a lot of flexibility to play around. So let's see what we can do with this. So Cameron's taken a portrait of his girlfriend up against one of those light tubes. You'll notice this big bright spot right here is a light tube, and he's held up his phone to get a reflection right here. Cameron, I would suggest though in the future, like that shot, if you'd have taken your phone and tilted it so that the phone was portrait, so it covered the light tube, you know what I mean? I think that would have been pretty cool, because there's not a lot you can do with this all white overly exposed portion of your light source. But I do like that you put the reflection in here. That's a nice touch. I did a lighting video a while back. This is called Rembrandt lighting. You can see on her cheek we've got this triangle of light, and she's mostly lit on one side, and the extra light just spills off onto her cheekbone on the other side. That is a great lighting technique if you're using to take portraits. I'm gonna add just a little bit more softness by decreasing the clarity and take down the texture a little bit. Let's try and create that dreamy look here. And I might play around with the crop on this one and see if we can't get a cooler shape with that light source. The rule of thirds is a great guideline to follow when you're trying to compose your subject. So when you see a crop box pop up and you've got your 3 lines, vertical, horizontal, well, 3 rows, those are gonna help you line up the important elements of your shot so that you have a nicer composition. And since the top of her head's cut off, I think what we might do is line up the center of her eye with that left third and see what we get with that. That's pretty cool. I'll lock that. I want to take this a little bit softer with the noise reduction. And since I'm losing some of that detail with noise reduction, I'll bring some of it back with a little bit of texture. Darken some of these shadows a little. I always like to play with exposure before I go messing with any of the color. I'm gonna make my blacks a little bit. Let's moody this. Let's really increase some of the mood here by dropping those blacks just a bit. Try and use our target tool again and bring some of this blue. I'm gonna increase the saturation on that blue on that side, and I'm going to increase just a little bit more of that purple on the right side. So here's our before, which is still a good shot, and then the edit. We've softened it up a lot. We've increased those color differences so we have a little bit more intensity on those opposing colors. I could use the healing brush to get rid of some of these little imperfections, like the little freckles or spots. Smooth those out. There we go. That's a really good looking image. Dude, thank you so much for submitting. I hope you like this one. I'm going to save all these images and I will respond to your emails and send you the edits. Our next photo is coming to us from Connor McCarthy. Connor gave us a really, really cool image with an incredibly unique perspective. I really appreciate photos like this, Connor, because I think changing the perspective is the best way to make your shots super noticeable, because people don't typically see, like in this case, they don't see the road from that angle. You'd have to be laying on the road to get that shot, and it's not something that we see all the time. So changing your perspective is going to help you get really unique shots, and I like this one a lot. My only ask is that if this was in RAW and we had a little bit different of a cloud cover, we could have recovered some really unique shapes and colors from the clouds, but we won't have that in this one because it is only a JPEG. So again, I gotta stress, you gotta shoot RAW. But there's a lot we can do with this image, and I love this so much. I love this one so much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to drop the exposure just a touch. I wanna increase the contrast. Okay, and you can tell just by increasing the contrast, we get rid of some of that haze that we have going on there. I think I wanna keep a little bit more of the highlights so we bleed out. See, there's nothing we can recover from the sky. It just looks like an overcast day. I want to darken some of these shadows a bit. I'll leave the whites at 0. And we'll darken the blacks just a touch. I think the color temperature is pretty good, but I want to target these greens, and I want to increase some of the saturation on these greens just a little bit. And I'm actually going to shift the hue of those greens to be a bit more of a brighter green. There we go. I'm going to bring up some of this yellow. No, I don't want to change the color of it. I want to change the saturation. Now this is going to be a great photo that we can play with the texture and clarity a bit, because we got so much detail on these leaves, especially with them being pine trees, right? So I'm going to bring the texture up. Clarity up. I'm going to increase dehaze just a touch. I'm going to just bring up the exposure a couple points. I wouldn't tweak this much more. I think this is a really cool shot. I don't want to change too much of it without, you don't want to take images too far. You just want to make these subtle changes. And if you look at the original, it's a little bit washed out. There isn't very much color, and we don't have a whole lot of contrast. And what we've done is added some contrast. We've made the colors a little bit brighter. We've added a little bit darker blacks where there are blacks, and we've boosted some of the yellows and the greens. And I think that's just a really, really cool shot. Now, again, we could take this a step farther in Photoshop and completely remove the sky and put blue skies or clouds in there and do the whole 9 yards. But I just wanted to show you guys some of the simple photo editing techniques that you can do in Lightroom. So Connor, thanks again for the shot. Super good job. So the last one coming to us today is from Gabe at Creator's Isle. This shot was taken somewhere in Canada. I don't know exactly where, and it is a raw image. I will assume that there is a lot of clouds in the sky, but right now we can't really make out the tops of these mountains, right? But once we start playing with these exposure sliders, we're gonna start to see exactly what the top of these mountains look like. So first thing I'm gonna do is take the highlights, and I'm gonna drag those down. And just by taking the highlights down, you can start to see the top of those mountains where you couldn't even see them before, right? So we're gonna take those highlights down. I'm gonna drop some of the whites actually. Increase the contrast. And I think we'll lose it if we boost exposure, but this is where we can really get that dehaze working for us. Okay. I don't want, you see the base of the mountain there where it's far away, it's started to become a little bit more darker and pronounced. I want to try and decrease that because it's not natural, right? So I'm going to take the luminance part of our targeted slider. I'm going to click on that area, I'm gonna lighten it up a touch because we want to still maintain that sense of perspective. I'm gonna add a little bit of clarity, a touch of texture, because we've got these really cool leaves in the foreground. I think I can tell that this shot was taken with a pretty wide lens. Let's see, what is the built-in lens profile? This was shot on a Sony 18-105. Okay. I want to try and kill some of this distortion on the trees, right? So I'm going to increase the distortion just a little bit. Something like plus 25, look. And we do have some chromatic aberration happening on these branches. I don't know if you can tell, but once you start getting into finer details at the edge of your lenses, you'll notice that you can start to see the separation of reds and greens and blues, and that's called chromatic aberration. So you can use this quick box to kind of get rid of some of that. Let me see if I can zoom in there for you. All right, so have a look at the edges of the branches without removed chromatic aberration. You can see how there's the reds and stuff there. Chromatic aberration will be taken away a little bit by using that. And you can see it takes away the red. It's pretty significant, actually. Since we've got a landscape, I'm going to try and add a little bit of vignette to the corners. You can tell I like to do some vignetting. I'm going to crop in on this photo just a little bit and keep those trees a little closer to the edge and bring in some more of the foreground. I want to darken some of these shadows just a bit. And I want to increase a little bit of these highlights. That's looking pretty good. Let's use our targeted color mixer and grab some of these greens with the saturation selected and saturate those a little bit. And I'm going to shift those yellows to a bit more of a green. Oh man, that's starting to look pretty cool. You know, I'm going to try and drag that foreground a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, dude. I'm pretty happy with that. I would post that on my IG for sure. The original image, we couldn't see much of the top of the mountains. We've got a muted color tone on our foreground. You can't really see any of the color in our trees at all. It looks really washed out, but you add a bit of color saturation, you dehaze the scene a bit, increase the contrast, and man, that looks pretty cool. Gabe, Simon, good job, guys. I hope you guys had a good time in Canada. And yeah, that's gonna pretty much do it. I appreciate you guys so much for sending your images to me. You guys are really, really good photographers, and I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. Make sure you guys let me know in the comments below, how would you have edited those photos? Could we gone a step farther? Or in the next one, would you like to see us take some of these images into Photoshop and do some sky replacement, stuff like that? Your support in these videos means the world to me, guys. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe with notifications on, and I will see you in the next one.